Good evening and welcome to Insight Live. And tonight we are talking about the story of the cross, but the story of the cross that you've never heard before, at least I hadn't. And we asked the question, how is it possible that a brutal form of Roman execution, it's kind of like talking about the gas chamber or the electric chair, how did that become the defining symbol of a world religion? And it's united people, it's divided people, and tonight we want to explore the history of the cross as you've never heard or seen it before.
Well, so we've got the topic, the story of the cross. A warm welcome from me, Melanie, this Tuesday night. And we have some very special guests and a book that is actually going to be very enlightening. And we thought we'd bring it to you as we, started Lent today. It's Shrove Tuesday. I hope you had a wonderful Shrove Tuesday. And we know it's not all about pancakes.
I didn't even know it was about pancakes.
Oh, no, everybody says we're going to cook pancakes.
Really?
But actually, I was explaining today, as I was looking up what the meaning is, and it really is kind of like a throwing off, a kind of a time of repentance or whatever. There's some very connected things with the language. But anyway, tonight we have Martin and Esther Whittock with us. And we've had Martin on before, and Esther is his daughter. So during this time of lockdown and COVID, we have seen this family quite productive, Kurt.
Yeah, we have.
But the book tonight that we are looking at, is that The Story of the Cross?
The Story of the Cross,
It is called The Story of the Cross. And here it is right there on your screens there. And we have, going to be just hearing the story of how they wrote it, why they wrote it, and how a father and daughter combo can get together during the COVID time and actually make such a magnificent, kind of like an heirloom almost. I mean, I think it's quite, for me, I was just talking earlier about all the research you'd have to do to kind of look at the pictures, get the historical framework, and here we have it all in one book with a wonderful perspective.
I think for Easter too, it would make just a really incredible gift. I mean, it's interesting. You don't have to be a Christian. You can just see, like, for example, I didn't know, what is the first depiction of Jesus dying on the cross in the history of the world? What does it look like? We'll see it tonight. Okay, but otherwise, I didn't know that before. I was always fascinated. Remember, I had a friend, I think she lived in South Africa. No, in San Diego, and she collected crosses. So whenever her friends traveled overseas to exotic destinations like Congo, Japan, Fiji, whatever, she would always get us to bring back little crosses for her. And I think I brought her back a cross from Asia. But I remember we were having an argument one time about how Jesus is portrayed on the cross, and we were in the Cape Flats in Cape Town, and suddenly my friend, it was David Bell, remember, from our church in San Diego, and he's an African American, and we were on a trip together, and so David and I were out in the middle of the Cape Flats, and suddenly we were surrounded by just a crowd of people that were quite violent and threatening us, and the whole argument was basically, how is Jesus portrayed on the cross? Is he white? Is he black? What color is he? And literally they were about to lynch us, to kill us. I mean, literally that was happening. You could feel the fear. You could feel them crowding in us, the violence, the chanting happened. But it was all around how Jesus was depicted. And then suddenly David Bell, bless his heart, gets up there and he just gives him his testimony about how he came to Christ and what Christ meant for him. And Melanie, that guy came out of the worst environment, even though he grew up in America, that people went from almost ready to kill us to embracing us, and tears falling down their eyes was the most amazing thing. So I think it's so important, how is Jesus depicted in different cultures? For example, when I was in Latin America, in Spain, you see Christ on the cross. When I was in Germany, I saw Christ off the cross. And so it's almost like if you grow up with Christ on the cross, it's like saying, well, is he still there? I thought he resurrected. He's powerless. Then you see a baby Jesus depicted. He's just a baby. But when you go to, say, the northern countries like, Scandinavia, Germany, then you see the resurrected Christ. So it's very interesting.
It is, and I think culture is a very big thing, and I think we should be careful not to criticize each other. I mean, if you in the Catholic setup, you do have him, especially in Spain, he's on the cross.
Yeah.
Whereas with the evangelicals, we see him as the risen Christ, and we don't want to see him on the cross because that's offensive to us, because he's risen, he's not there anymore. It's like the grave, the grave is empty. So, but I think, I love the way Jesus, really, encourages us to be respectful to other people, even if we don't agree with them. And I think tonight is going to be very interesting because we are looking across history, and history encompasses a lot of different cultures and timelines of people throughout history, how they saw the cross, how they depicted it in art and in their buildings. And would you like to go straight to our guests?
I definitely would, because I'm running out of expertise. They wrote the book. I didn't write the book.
I just want to give...
I looked through it. An absolutely amazing book. Melanie, it is an amazing book. It's not just well written, it's engagingly written, and it's illustrated with photos. And you just look at one of the photos. We'll see 12 tonight. And you look at one and it's just like you start asking questions and you want answers. And that's what they provide.
I'd like to just kind of just give a little intro as far as, I'll start with Esther. She actually was explaining to us that she's a high school teacher, and she was giving us the whole rundown about how it was teaching online. Just a wonderful young woman with a vibrancy and, working with her father on this book. And Martin, who we've had before.
But hold on, it says she is a University of Cambridge graduate in theology and religious studies.
Good.
I wouldn't mind putting that after my name.
And then, do you want to say anything more about her? So I was just thinking about Martin, which is quite interesting because we've introduced him before, a lay minister in the Church of England, and he's acted as an historical consultant to the National Trust and the English Heritage. So that also is, quite deep roots there. And he also retired from teaching in 2016 to devote more time to writing. So, and he's got other books as well, which we'll also mention when they actually come on.
Too many books to mention.
No, good. We've got Viking ones and various other ones, but let's invite them on.
The last time we interviewed Martin, it was a few months ago, about the end times again. And being a historian, what he did is explored how people interpret the end times, throughout history, and kind of, we think we're unique, we think we are in the last days, and it was a brilliant program. We really got a good feedback about it. So now we're not doing it with the end times. Now we're doing how the cross is seen in different cultures and also throughout the centuries.
And we are live and interactive, and we would love you to engage with both Esther and Martin. Perhaps your view on where you've picked up the idea of where the cross belongs, or maybe your earliest experience of seeing a cross and how it impacted you. I know one of the people who actually came to our church and became the pastor of the church in San Diego, he literally got saved looking at a stained glass window of the cross. Just a revelation happened. So it's amazing how the cross is so impactful.
Well, I remember, if you're British, you'll probably know Port-au-Banús. Port-au-Banús is like the Beverly Hills of Europe by the sea. We used to have our church there. That's where all the football players, the millionaires, the billionaires, the yacht basins, everything is there. And so there'd never been a church there. So we started a church there, and then we put up the cross.
It was a huge cross, a
huge cross. And it became like a symbol. Some people really liked it, but remember one Swedish guy got so angry, that's so terrible that you should put that up there. But otherwise, people were taking pictures of it because a cross did not belong in Port-au-Banús, into the Beverly Hills by the sea. But let's cross over to our good friends, they're becoming friends, Martin and Esther Whittock. Hello, guys.
Good evening.
Hi, Esther, Martin. We just want to give you a very, very warm welcome from Revelation TV, from our viewers as well. And thank you so much for taking time to be with us. And we're so excited about this particular book. You've got other books which we can mention as well, but this one I think is absolutely timely, with many people starting their fast, for Lent, and just kind of really taking time to meditate on what took place at Easter, and how Jesus died for our sins, and how God has redeemed us should we choose to follow Jesus and to accept him as Lord and Savior. So this is an exciting thing, and I really like the front cover of the book. I'm fascinated with different crosses anyway, but you're welcome to wave and say hi to our viewers. Good. So this is a father and son, father and daughter, beg your pardon, duo. It's it's kind of like that song, Father and Son, father and daughter duo. And just writing during difficult times, and look at the fruit of what's come out. Kurt, I'm sure you have the first question.
I do have a question. Okay, Martin, you're the historian. I mean, for many years in your life, but how did you involve Esther, or vice versa, in this project? And why the story of the cross? I mean, isn't it something that everybody knows? Or is there something transformational that we should know? And why did you do this project together?
Well, actually, it all started with Esther. Esther was doing some work at university, which prompted me to think, gosh, we think we know a lot about this, but there's so many different ways in which it's been portrayed. I mean, could you briefly say what you're doing?
Well, yeah, because what I was looking at, I think it was in my second year, one of my coursework modules was looking at religion in art, and one of my essays was about looking at how the cross had developed over the Middle Ages. And so we ended up talking about it quite a lot, because I would talk about almost every essay through with you, wouldn't I, before I handed it in. He would proofread it and just check that it made sense. So when I was handing my essays, you almost knew as much as I did by the end. And so it was a discussion that we were having. And then we thought, well, we're just scratching the surface here. There's a whole history that, I'm not even covering in this essay. And that's when we started discussing about other ideas, and just thinking about, there's just so much that you could write about, and so many different avenues and aspects that you could take.
Yeah, it just became clear that over 2,000 years, which is a long period of time, Christians have had very, very different ways of representing the cross. That doesn't mean to say they've been contradictory ways. They've been different because the cross is so complicated. You can come at it from so many different angles and so many different aspects of it. But it became clear to us that over time there were certain trends, certain patterns that you could see, and how it changed and developed, that we began to think, well, wouldn't it be great to tell the story of the cross from its very early representations right up to today, high-end fashion and some pretty controversial things that are happening in the world today connected to the cross that we'll talk about a bit later on, and all the things that have gone on in between. Christ on the cross, Christ off the cross, how he's shown. And hopefully this evening we'll be able to explore with you just a little bit, just a tiny bit, about some of the ways in which the Christian depiction of Jesus on the cross or off the cross has changed over 2,000 years. And it's opening a window into people's beliefs, really.
Okay, so let's go to the first. Do you have an email?
I do have an email, actually. But before we went to the email, I just wanted to, when we were with John and Sheila, where did we travel to? And we saw that particular cross with the, and I cannot remember.
That must have been Holy Island.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was Holy Island.
And who's the saint?
Oh, they'll know. It starts with a C or something.
Somebody will write it. I can't believe.
Cuthbert. St. Cuthbert, yeah.
Yes.
That's it, yeah.
Now, he had a certain cross, and that was very interesting.
It was beautiful.
But we can actually talk about that just now. But I just want to read Dawn's email here. She says, hi, Kurt and Melanie. It's interesting how different cultures think about the cross of Jesus. In India and other parts of the world, there are no crosses or crucifixions because the Indian people would think that Christians worship the cross. Many blessings. Martin and Esther, any comments on what Dawn said?
Well, it's certainly true that there is very, very different cultural approaches to the cross. But interestingly enough, one of the very last pictures that we'll show you this evening, so I mustn't give it away too much, shows you how within the Indian subcontinent, untouchables, Dalits, have begun to increasingly identify with the idea of the crucified Jesus, because they're effectively saying, we're like that, we're rejected and crucified as well. So certainly what was said just then is true. It's very, very complicated and sometimes quite contradictory, different viewpoints. But it is interesting, as we'll see a bit later on, that downtrodden people from Coptic Christians through the Dalits in India are now increasingly portraying Jesus on the cross because they want to make a statement about the fact that his brokenness says something about their social situation today.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So should we go to some of those images?
Well, let's go to the first image because it's a shocking image. It looks like graffiti. It looks like somebody was making a statement, and there it is. And you can talk us through this because it looks like a child's drawing, but what is this?
Yeah, what is that? Well, that is the first depiction of the crucifixion of Christ in art.
Wow.
Not by a Christian, of course, but by a critic of the Christian faith. Archaeologists found it scratched in the wall plaster of a room on the Palatine Hill in Rome. It shows a donkey-headed man nailed to a cross. Next to it is scratched a man raising his hand in worship, and beneath it, in pretty crude Greek, it says, in translation, Alexamenos, we don't know who he was, worships his God. It dates from about the year 200, and clearly the person that scratched that was absolutely horrified at the idea that anybody could worship someone who'd been crucified. And it just reminds us of the offence of the cross, how shocking the cross was, how shameful the cross was. And of course, as Christians, we know, and he did all that for me, he did all that for me, which is deeply moving. But many people at the time were absolutely horrified by it. And it's interesting that for the first perhaps 200 years of Christianity, Christians wrote about the cross, but they didn't depict it because it was just so raw. And until the 4th century, people were still being crucified.
Oh, I
Really?
didn't even know that.
Can I just kind of go across to one of our viewers' emails, and I'd be very interested to see what you have to say in the light of what we've been saying. This is Liz. Hi, Liz. Thank you so much for writing in. Interesting question. If you look into the cross, it was never anything to do with Christianity. It was part of the Babylonia and used as paganism. Then Christians adopted it later on. So with your research and everything, perhaps you can respond to Liz in what you understand from your research.
Well, certainly for a start, crucifixion has a very long history, doesn't it? And we certainly find people being crucified from Persian times onwards, adopted by the Romans, and then of course we see it happening in Judea and Galilee in the 1st century, and crucifixion continued in the Roman Empire until the 4th century. But what Liz said is correct in another sense as well, and that is that the badge of the cross, the symbol of the cross, or cross shapes, appear in lots and lots of different cultures.
Yeah.
So for example, we find it in Viking culture, we find it in North American culture. One of the reasons why we sometimes see Native Americans wearing crosses in the 19th century is not necessarily because they converted, but because the cross was a sacred symbol. And in some cultures, it stood for the 4 winds, north, south, east, and west, that kind of thing. So Liz is correct, both historically, crucifixion has a history, a backstory, much older than Christianity, and that runs in line with Christianity, parallel with Christianity, until the conversion of the Roman Empire. But it also is something that we find in other cultures as well. So when Christians use the cross, they're using a symbol that different peoples will have already some kind of view on. Now, they might disagree with that view, but there will be different views on it. Crosses are significant badges, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
She was also saying, thank you, that's really shed some very good light, because I was thinking that crucifixion was Roman, but you were saying the Persian and Romans took it on. So she also just mentioned that she was told years ago that that you shouldn't wear a cross as you're celebrating Jesus' death. I mean, personally, I think that's a very narrow way of of expressing that. I think that if I don't particularly wear a cross. I do have one cross and I don't particularly wear it, but I know people who wear crosses and they just find it a very comforting thing to remind themselves of what Jesus did. Esther, what about you? What's your view on people wearing crosses in the light of what Liz has said, that we shouldn't be celebrating Jesus' death?
Yeah, I think the cross has come to mean so much more to Christians than this was Jesus's mode of execution. For me, it's that sense of this was through salvation, this is redemption, this is our means by which our relationship with God is restored. So I think that, like Dad was saying earlier, where at the very beginning of Christianity, that's what it was thought of, was that mode of execution. But I think as the cross has evolved over time, Christians have come to see it as that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on what the significance of his death was and what that relationship with Jesus that it led us to have. So I think that's what when you're saying that people find it comforting.
Yes, yes.
They're thinking, that Jesus, he died for me, and it's that kind of personal aspect as well that I think people have, and that humility as well, that this was for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, and
just in 2 seconds.
Yeah. We're all jumping in with questions.
No, just on what Esther's saying, because Kurt would often say to me, well, it's really like wearing an electric chair around your neck, and it could be, and perhaps that's what Liz was referring to, that some people would see it as like just a very ugly torture, mode of torture. So when Kurt kind of said, it's like wearing an electric chair around your neck, it was kind of,
I think it demonstrates, the extent of God's love.
Yeah, definitely.
That he's chosen the foolish things, the weak things to confound the wise, that you could have a symbol of someone washing someone's feet, and that could be a symbol of Jesus came to serve and not to be served. And I think there's other symbols in the Bible. Remember in Caesarea, they discovered the lyre of David,
beautiful ring,
for example. The ring. I think there's other beautiful symbols we can use, but I think everything culminates in the cross.
In the cross,
you can't escape it.
Yeah,
but
so we have Les, because you just mentioned the scripture.
Okay, then.
So Kurt just mentioned the scripture. I thought this is very appropriate right now. Les is one of our viewers. Les, lovely that you're with us. Always brings an appropriate scripture. He said 1 Corinthians 1:18 from the Amplified, for the message of the cross is foolishness, absurd and illogical to those who are perishing and spiritually dead, because they reject it. But to us who are being saved by God's grace, it is the manifestation of the power of God. Galatians 3:13. Christ purchased our freedom and redeemed us from the curse of the law and its condemnation by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is anyone who hangs, crucified in brackets, as on a tree, a cross. Thank you, Les, for that. That's a very lovely translation of that, and certainly fits in.
Yeah, Les is our theological advisor. Never misses a program and always offers good things.
Always finds the appropriate
but I think my
scripture.
question is going to be answered in the next one. Okay, so we're going to show our next. I miss slideshows when we had that in those days where we had slideshows. Here we go, fireside chat slideshow, and this is an ivory panel. And again, I have to say, what is this?
So, as I said, it's an ivory panel, and it's actually one of the first pictures first depictions of Jesus on the cross that we have. So it's not until the early 5th century that Jesus actually appears on the cross.
Wow.
And what's quite striking about this image is Jesus is alive, his eyes are open. It's almost like he's reigning from the cross. He's kind of triumphant. His arms are very straight, and he is on that cross, he is reigning. And it kind of echoes when it says in the Bible, I am the good shepherd, I lay down my life for the sheep, that Jesus is in control. He is choosing to lay down his life. So this very early depiction that we have of Jesus on the cross is very much focusing on the divinity of Christ, that he is victorious, he is triumphant, and he is reigning and ruling from the cross. So it's really focusing on that divinity and that aspect of Jesus is fully in control when he is on the cross.
And then the writing above that, what is that?
RPX, it looks like, IVD. What is it?
Oh, it's Rex Jude. It's the abbreviation in Latin for King of the Jews.
King of the Jews.
Okay. Oh,
and then
wow.
the other thing, obviously, that will intrigue our viewers is you have somebody hanging, and I'm presuming that that is Judas Iscariot.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's almost like that juxtaposition of there's Judas there who has kind of lost that control, whereas Jesus, who is fully in control on the cross there.
And then you've got the money at the bottom just being spilt out. Oh. Now, the person on the very right, who, because that doesn't look like a soldier, who would that be, do you think? Or who would that represent?
Well, it's a good question. No one actually fully knows who those people around Jesus would represent. It does look quite like a more of a... It doesn't look like a traditional Roman soldier, but
no.
I think if anything, it would.
I think actually, I could just interject there. I think that he's wearing the kind of military uniform that you'd have found soldiers wearing in the 5th century, not the classical ones that we expect Roman soldiers to wear. Looking at them, I think he's short tunicked and trousered, like the Germanic soldiers who people in the 5th century would have known operating. So I think what we've got here is I think people are depicting Jesus in the art forms of their day.
Yeah.
So you want a soldier? I'll draw you a soldier.
No, but this is incredible what they're doing. Look, they're contextualizing it to their day, and sometimes we think that's like blasphemous, you know, where there are movies like Jesus of Montreal, you know, modern depictions in cinema and art and photography of what would Jesus look like in the modern day, but they were doing it there in the 5th century.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow.
Good.
Okay,
so
shall we continue our slideshow?
Yes,
we have 12, so we're on number 3. Let's go to number 3. Okay, is that number 3? Did I get the right one? Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of hundred years later, we have these what are called like crux gematas appearing, and there are these beautifully like precious stones and precious metals. So Jesus is there in the middle, but he's surrounded by this glory and this magnificence. So it's the idea that Jesus is royal, he is majestic, he is reigning from the cross, but this time it's done through the use of precious stones, as we can see from the cross of Otto and Matilde in this image. And you get quite a few of these images of these beautifully encrusted crosses, just really emphasizing he is king, basically.
So fill us in with the history of who did this, and wow, I mean, it's beautiful. So
the cross is actually 10th century, and the Otto who they're talking about, and Matilde. Otto was the Holy Roman Emperor. Basically, in the early Middle Ages, the Roman Empire was kind of reinvented again from about the year 900 onwards, 900 onwards. It began to develop again, but in the German lands, and the Pope crowned the kings of the Germans as emperor. And later on, these people become Holy Roman Emperors, and the Holy Roman Empire would last right the way through till it was abolished by Napoleon in the early 19th century. And so Otto and Matilde, they were German king and queen who were the Holy Roman Emperor, Holy Roman Empress of the German lands in the 10th century. So this cross is a 10th century cross, and as Esther was saying, it's a classic crux gemata, jeweled cross. And as Esther was saying, it's the majesty of Jesus. Yeah. He's still reigning from the cross, isn't he?
So it's still very much that divinity seems to cross here in a different way, because Jesus is the actual image of Jesus on there. He's not particularly kind of alive looking, but he's surrounded by this beautiful these gems and these precious stones and the metal to kind of show he is still king even in his crucifixion.
And no sense of pain.
Yes. Yeah. So even though he's looking dead, his body is pristine. There's no sign of suffering, no sign of pain. So he's dead, but he's still very much in control of that death again.
Wow, I'd never noticed that before.
Absolutely
we have another
fascinating.
email.
Well, we have an email from Dawn. Hi, Kurt, Melanie, and guests. A lot of people wear the cross as a witness of what they believe, and that Jesus sacrificed himself for us, about the passionate love for the world. So many people have had to fight for their jobs through courts that work for the NHS in the UK. God bless you all. So obviously you're aware of what's been happening with people who wear crosses. They've been told not to, or whatever the case is. I have not personally met anybody or know anybody who had to actually remove a cross to go to work. Any comments on that? Obviously this is what we're dealing with in this day.
It's modern history.
I've never had a personal problem with it. When I was a teacher, I used to wear a cross on my lapel, so much so that one day it got broken, and the little kid said to me, "Mr. Whittock, you're not wearing your cross today." It was quite sweet. Clearly, we are watched as teachers. No one ever complained at me for wearing a cross, I have to say.
No, because I am a religious studies teacher, so you would expect to see religious icons in my room, but I've got a little palm cross by my desk. I remember one of the kids asking me, "So Miss, what religion are you?" And another kid turns and was like, "Don't be silly, she's got a cross by her desk. Obviously she's a Christian." So you can just observe and take in way more than you think. So again, I've never had an issue. That might be the environments that we work in, but we've never had a problem in terms of. And
we just taught in state schools. It's not some kind of precious bubble of a private school.
And they weren't religious.
No, not religious school. No. We basically both taught in state comprehensive schools. So neither of us are in a very strong position to comment from any personal experience about what we know we've read in the newspaper.
Yes.
But certainly us ourselves wearing, discreet crosses. But not sort of pushing it at anybody. We've never come across anything negative at all. So I often feel I'd like to know more about the backstory about some of these court cases. Not because I'm saying that it's not as it's presented, but just because I'm just often intrigued what led up to that.
Yeah, there's always a backstory to it.
Only because we've just not had a problem. It's not in state schools anyway,
talking about...
That's good news. I want to just say that's good news.
That is good news. Talking about... Look, when I was in Catholic school, Melanie, I don't even know if I told you this, the priest, my teacher, said, if I die in a car accident without wearing a cross, I'll go straight to hell.
Oh, dear.
So that was the first time that I heard about wearing a cross. Not very very negative. Well, anyway, talking about a backstory, number 4... we have the Jellingstone Reconstruction, which is absolutely fascinating. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what in the world is this and where is it? What is the backstory, the story behind this?
Well, these next two crosses, they kind of go together, this one and the next one. This is Viking Christ. Viking Christ. And it reminds us that as the Christian faith moved out to the Mediterranean heartlands and exploded out into sub-Saharan Africa and then into Northern Europe, and then beyond that again, of course, in the more recent times, into Asia and North America, people engage with the cross and use the artistic understandings of their own day. And this one, the one we just saw just then, was a reconstruction, because the paint's come off the original one, of what's called the Jellingstone, Jelling, it's just pronounced Jelling, from Denmark. And it shows Christ on the cross, but he's bound to the cross. He's not nailed to the cross.
Okay.
Do you notice that? If you're not very careful, there isn't actually even a cross, is there?
No,
exactly. Yeah, it's quite intriguing, isn't it? And what this is doing is, this is drawing on Viking symbolism, because in the north, in Viking Scandinavia, there was a belief that their god, previous to Christianity, who was called Odin, had hung himself from a tree for 3 days and 3 nights to gain magical powers. And early Christians clearly rejected that, but then said, but how do I represent a God who sacrifices himself for people? And so they took the symbolism of their own day and they applied it to Jesus and clearly said, you know about that? Well, this was how it was really done.
Wow.
You know about Odin? Well, actually, forget that. This is how wisdom is really got. But they used the artistic motifs of their own day.
That's really cool.
So how could we do that today? I mean, we're going to see some other different crosses. For example, I mean, that's like saying, well, I'll replace the cross with the gas chamber or the electric chair or the firing squad. Is there anything to your knowledge that anybody's been doing something like that?
I don't know. I guess thinking about like the Viking cross, they're very much like influenced by the artistic license of the day, and I guess it's quite difficult to think about in the 21st century because we have so many influences. There's not kind of one outstanding one. I guess if there was some abstract art that was, some piece of modern installation, but because we have so many influences, particularly in Britain, where there's loads of cultures and loads of different ideas, it would be quite difficult to pinpoint exactly what people would choose to.
Yeah, it would be very difficult. Great challenge, but very difficult.
Yeah.
So the next slide kind of goes in with the one we just showed. Let's go to the next slide.
Yes, this is Jesus. This is Jesus wearing trousers, because Viking men wore trousers.
Okay.
And he's bound to the cross. Can you see the little ropes at his wrists?
Yes.
Yes. Once again, he's bound to the cross. So it's taking the same Viking art forms and applying it to Jesus. And that one comes from Unslev in Denmark. And they found similar ones like that, little trousered Jesus wearing trousers and bound to the cross, from Uppland in Sweden as well. And again, it just shows, like with the previous one, people using artistic styles they know and understand and trying to convey new and complex ideas, but using methods that people will understand.
It's also quite interesting because, like, when we were doing some research in one of our other books and we were looking at the context of the method of crucifixion, which is a bit of a dark thing to be reading about, but actually I hadn't realised that the Romans didn't always nail people to the cross. Sometimes they just bound them to the cross, and actually that you died of suffocation anyway. So it's kind of interesting that the Vikings were using that because that was their like influence and what they were used to. But actually, Romans, when they were crucifying people, it seems from reading between the lines in the Bible that Jesus probably was nailed to the cross, from when he appears to his disciples and says, "Look, put your fingers in my wrists." Yeah. But it is interesting to know that other people who would have been crucified at the time of Jesus wouldn't necessarily have been nailed. They may have just been bound to the cross. Yeah,
it's not actually necessary to nail someone in crucifixion to kill them. Simply the weight of the body hanging from arms fixed to the cross part of a cross is quite sufficient to kill someone. But it can take up to 3 days sometimes. It's a terrible way to die. But intriguingly, there's plenty of documentary evidence that although Jesus clearly was nailed and nailing was done, culturally people were sometimes just tied to the cross, and sometimes they were just nailed at their feet to stop them getting off.
Oh, dear me.
Wow.
Awful. Oh.
In fact, recently, just suddenly remembered, last year, they found a body in Cambridgeshire, a Roman crucifixion. The only example of crucifixion from this country, the only example north of the Alps that we know about. It was done very commonly, but normally the bodies were just dumped on rubbish heaps. And last year, archaeologists were working through bodies that they found by a wayside settlement in Cambridge, England, UK, and they found a man who'd been crucified.
Wow.
And
with the nail still through his ankle bone. We don't know who he was, we don't know why he was killed, but crucifixion was happening in this country too under the Romans.
Wow, that's very close to home.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go a little further away from home in Congo. We've been there, Melanie.
Yes.
Congo, several times I've been there. That's a whole nother program. But let's go to our next slide. And again, I love the shot. Very dramatic. Is that done in bronze, or tell us about this? What is this?
It's bronze. It's bronze. It's 17th century actually, and this was part of our wanting to explore how different cultures represent Jesus on the cross. And obviously today we've only got an opportunity to look at some of them. I remember when Esther and I were looking at how Christ is portrayed. Do you remember when we looked at India, how he was portrayed with blue skin?
Yeah.
Yeah. This wasn't on the cross, but the Holy Family is shown, and Jesus is blue because in Hindu culture, blue's a holy colour.
Yeah, because a lot of the Hindu gods are painted as blue because of how expensive dye would have been.
Yeah. So although that's not Christ on the cross, it just goes to show how people in different cultures use whatever is sacred and important to them to make a statement about the one they've now come to realise is the one, because obviously they become Christians. And these were from the Kingdom of Congo, and what we find in Ethiopia and in sub-Saharan Africa, increasingly, and quite rightly so, obviously, because if the word became flesh, then that's flesh like you and me, and regardless of colour and ethnicity, Jesus identifies with all of us. And there are these wonderful African Christs from the Kingdom of Congo and from Angola, which we've seen just there. And the other interesting thing about this one is some experts think that this one from the Kingdom of Congo is, and this is quite shocking, it's female and male.
Really?
Wow.
Yes, I can see that.
Wow.
Yes, which now that is quite a challenging thought, and the idea is that the whole of humanity hung on the cross.
Wow.
The Word became flesh. That means that God identifies with the totality of humanity, and as we know from Genesis, in the image of God was made male and female. God made them, and so this person's saying, well, in a sense, although I know Jesus was a man, he identifies with women too.
Wow, that's incredible.
And of course, we know that's true, and this is showing it figuratively. Now, not all our experts agree with this, but I think it does look as if this person has female form.
Wow, amazing. Can we go back to a couple of our emails right now? Santander, thank you so much. He actually sent some images of his gym equipment, and during a time where he actually got chicken pox and was quite ill, he saw the sign of the cross with the wires of his gym equipment, and he found that really comforting, and he felt the Lord saying to him, "Don't worry, I'm right here." And so Santander, that's really lovely. That's very meaningful. I had a very similar situation where I was in a production, and there was some really bad stuff going on with some of the cast, and I just saw this, it was actually the Pirates of Penzance, and there was a shadow of the ship and the sail, and it made a cross, and I just remember feeling the comfort of Jesus when I saw that cross, and the sense of it's going to be all right. So thank you for writing in and telling us how that has comforted you.
Yeah.
Kurt, did you have something
No,
to say?
it reminds me of a story. I don't know. I mean, I think Senator John McCain told it once. If it's true, I don't know. But it was when Alexander Solzhenitsyn was in the Gulag archipelago in Russia, and he was just ready to die. Basically, he was moving one pile of stones to point B and back, and he just said, "You know what? I'm just going to lie down, and I know that guards are going to beat me to death." So just as he lay down, an old man came and just made the sign of the cross in the sand. And when he saw that, this power came into him, and he said, "You know what? Nothing has changed on the outside, but on the inside, I know that this power of cross will defeat communism." And that's the story he tells. And thank you very much, Santander. I can relate to that too. Melanie.
Yeah, so we have Cynthia's feeling a little kind of, Cynthia, I can completely understand. Dear Kurt, Melanie, yes, it is interesting to see how different cultures portray the cross. I must say, I found the first picture you showed quite offensive and unnecessary. Which one was that?
No, but that's supposed to be like that.
Which one was
Yeah,
that?
that was the one with the donkey head.
Oh, yes.
And it is offensive.
Exactly. And they said,
we all agree.
It was supposed to be offensive
Yes.
because it was actually, there it is there. It was actually demeaning and saying that, against Jesus. They say that dying on the cross was one of the most horrific ways to die. The sheer brutality of crucifixion is unbearable. and then I find it very difficult to watch a film about it. I agree with you.
The Passion of the Christ, good case in point. That's hard to watch.
Terrible. I don't advise people to watch it. I find it difficult to understand why we need to know all the history of the cross and the different ways they did it and portrayed it. It does not add anything to the message of the cross whatsoever, and why Jesus died for us. So, I mean, I have opinion on this, Cynthia, and I actually find it absolutely interesting to see how cultures and people and how God represented himself and how people took that. Some are erroneous and some are more in line with what we believe today. But I definitely think that we learn from history. We learn also how to, what I believe, to communicate what Jesus did in a more sensitive way. So I personally find this quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, let's go to Congo, the Angola cross, number 7. We're going to get through them very nicely without rushing. But let's look at this, and I just can't picture that in Angola. It just doesn't make sense to me. I find this fascinating. What's happening here?
Well, again, we have Christ with African features, and we wanted to show these two crosses from the Kingdom of Congo, or this one may come from Angola. There's some debate about this, because again, we just wanted to just make the point that we're so used to white Christ in Western Europe and Northern Europe, and we wanted to remind readers that for vast swathes of the human race, Jesus is depicted differently, and quite right too, because of what we were saying, that in some ways Europeans have kind of well-meaningly imposed white Christ on the whole world, and clearly there have been key points in history where people in Africa and Asia, and are still doing it, are saying, okay, hold on a minute, I sign up to the faith, but I don't look like you, and I think I want to show Jesus not looking like you either.
Yeah, well, that almost got me killed in South Africa as I opened the program with that same argument.
Well, I hope we weren't too responsible for that.
No. Okay, so let's go to number 8, and entitled "Man of Sorrows."
Yeah. So as the Middle Ages go on, there was a shift. It wasn't immediate. There was still a few reigning from the cross and suffering on the cross side by side, but there was more of a shift towards drawing Jesus in a more realistic way, but also that focus on his humanity, and that idea that actually our redemption and salvation is through his suffering, and that he identifies with our suffering. So here we have a typical image of the Man of Sorrows, and they're actually images that are before his crucifixion, but as he's walking to the cross. And you can see that Jesus, when I'm looking at that, he is looking directly at me as the viewer.
Yes.
And he's identifying with the person who's looking at him. It's meant to evoke emotion and that repentance of, my sin has caused this suffering, but my goodness, am I grateful and am I thankful that you have done this for me? So it's very much focusing on that. It's quite a personal image, and at the time there was like a shift and focusing more on people's personal devotion, personal relationship with Jesus, and that image, as I said, him looking directly at the person looking at it, it's designed to evoke those emotions, and it makes you feel really, really quite sorry for him and sorry for the position that he's in.
And if you notice, the person that painted that in the 15th century, it's 15th century, 15th century. The person that painted that has telescoped the Good Friday story. If you can look back at it again.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Martin. That is absolutely astounding.
Do you see that when you look at it, you think of this as being Jesus talking to the women of Jerusalem?
Yes.
Yeah. But actually, you see, he already is bearing the marks of the nails in his hands.
That's right, yes.
Oh,
He already
that's
is
right.
showing the wound in his side.
Yes.
And behind him, he has the angels, who clearly are going to be the angels of resurrection.
Yes.
So in a sense, this picture telescopes all sorts of things of the Good Friday story, because the artist wants to tell you so much about this important day in history.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to use different language, like actually the artist had actually combined timelines and squeezed
Yes.
them together.
Yes.
I thought,
Yes.
It's like a whole motion picture
It really
condensed.
is,
Okay,
very-
let's move on because I want to we have some really interesting ones coming up. This is an altarpiece, the next one.
Yes, the Eisenhower Altarpiece. So it's a bit difficult to see from this image, but actually this is Jesus, and he is depicted as a plague victim. So this was at the time of the Black Death, when obviously there was it was horrific, and suffering and death was a daily occurrence, and death was a very real thing to those people. And this is an altarpiece at a monastery which was mainly looking after people who were suffering from the Black Death, but also other skin diseases. And it was that personal aspect of Jesus in his suffering understands your suffering, and it's that personal identification with Jesus again. But you can see it's a lot more realistic than the kind of the first images that we were seeing. You can see that he is in pain. You can see that he is suffering, and his body is a lot more realistic. But yeah, he's as the plague victim to show he's identifying with the suffering of all of humanity.
And so now Joy has written in, and I think we've kind of half answered your question. And she says, Jesus was a Jew, so why different images? That is so official. And that's from Joy, not quite sure about official. So Joy, from my perspective, and we'll be asking Martin and Esther just quickly, is that, I really picked up from what they were saying about every culture wants to identify with the Jesus that actually died for them personally. And I think what we've really been putting across tonight is actually the individual personal thing that Jesus comes to each individual, no matter what nationality. Martin, any kind of comments on what Joy said about he's a Jew, and obviously we're seeing an African depiction and all that. Just to reiterate what you've said about people wanting to identify.
Yes, I mean, Joy's absolutely correct. Jesus was a first century Jewish man who died on a Judean hillside at a particular period in time at the hands of the occupying power. And that's absolutely bottom line, no question about that. Okay. What I think is going on in these pictures, though, is not the denying of that, but it's the exploring of the implications of that. So it's going to people in Africa, Asia, wherever, and saying we have this message of a God, the God, who identifies with you. And those people then saying, how am I going to represent that artistically? So I'm not denying his Jewishness.
Okay, we have less than 2 minutes left.
That's
so
good. Thank you, Martin.
I want to go spend a little time on number 12, but let's go to the Coventry Cathedral and just see how the cross is portrayed there. Next slide. And just briefly comment 5 seconds on that.
Just a reminder, this cross is made from beams destroyed by a bombing attack in the Second World War, and behind it says "Father, forgive," and it's a symbol of the cross as reconciliation. It's
fantastic. And the next one is in my country, I think.
Yes, Tuscaloosa, 2011, tornado destroyed this entire neighborhood, and we came across this picture, and it had a cross made from the rubble. Someone had written Jesus below it, and I think at the top of it they've probably written their house number, 921.
Yes. Oh,
and they're saying,
wow.
This was where 921 was, but Jesus is still here.
Beautiful. Okay, we need to find out about your book. Where to
we
get
need
the book?
no, but the last one, the man on a village tree, and then you tell us where we can get our book, where you can get the book.
So this is an image from India, and it's representing the Christians from the Dalit community. So the Dalits are the untouchable community in India who are greatly discriminated against. And it was basically saying, this is Jesus. He is alongside you for the marginalized, as for everyone. And basically he is there.
And at the beginning of the program, you said, so how can we get your book, The Story of the Cross?
Okay, well, the Story of the Cross can be got from Lion Hudson, SPCK as they now are. They've joined SPCK. So you can find it on the Lion Hudson or SPCK website by Googling this, or indeed from Amazon, from Eden, from any online bookseller, or from any, of course.
Fantastic. So we have to say goodbye. Melanie, we have 20 seconds.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you so much, Martin. Thank you, Esther. We really, really appreciate what you did. We also want to say goodbye to our viewers at the same time as we say goodbye to you.
So we'll all say goodbye together
Yes,
then.
we'll all say goodbye. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thanks very much for being with us tonight.
See you next week.